And now, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Sandra Lawson, a rabbi, a Snapchat one, a musician, and an activist. Sandra Lawson sees her multitude identities as an asset and uses her identity as a bridge builder. Her 21st century rabbinate takes her from nursing homes to cafes to the world of social media, where she uses the aspects of her identity to connect with others with her charm and captivating smile. Rabbi Lawson received ordination from the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College in 2018. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology from St. Leo University and a Master of Arts degree in Sociology from Clark Atlanta University. And she almost got her PhD in Sociology, but look what happened. Rabbi Lawson was born in St. Louis and grew up in a military family. She herself served in the United States Army. I was a soldier too. She was a military police person with a specialty in military police investigation involved in cases of child abuse and domestic violence. Today, she lives in Burlington, North Carolina, and serves as the first director of racial diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Reconstructive Judaism. She previously was the associate chaplain for Jewish life at Elon University in North Carolina. We're all anxious, Rabbi, to hear of your diverse life experiences and learn from you this Shabbat. Welcome to B'nai Torah.
Thank you all so much for having me. Just because I'm a little concerned, let me, can I get a thumbs up to make sure that you guys can hear me properly? Awesome. Thank you, Rabbi. I'm quite humble, Shula, by the my bio that you read. It's always interesting hearing one's bio out loud. I'm really honored, and I really hope one day we can do this in person. And in this strange COVID world, I'm always honored to be in spaces with members of our community, and I get to meet all kinds of people that I would never have met before. And I'm just also really honored to be here on this particular Shabbat, this women's Shabbat, this Shabbat focused on women's leadership. And I want to start off, as rabbis do, whenever I give a speech, and maybe the Rabbi Steinhardt would say the same thing, I always have to bring in Torah. There's just no way around it. And I love all of our Torah portions. I can find meaning in every single one of them. But whenever people ask me what my favorite Torah portion is, instinctively, I just think of Yitro. And when I think of Yitro, I often call it the Torah of Jethro Bodine, and I hope some of you are smiling at that reference. And if you don't know what that reference is, I'll talk a little bit more. I say Jethro because, as Shula pointed out, by saying Jethro earlier, that in many English translations of our Torah, Yitro is translated as Jethro. And Jethro Bodine was a character from the 1960s television series, The Beverly Hillbillies. And maybe some of you have heard of this show, or maybe some of you have watched this show. I used to watch The Beverly Hillbillies in reruns with my dad, that and Andy Griffith and all those shows from that era. The show, The Beverly Hillbillies, is about a poor mountain family that struck it rich after oil was discovered on their property, and they moved to the hills, the Beverly Hills. Among the cast was a young, big-hearted, handsome, and simple man named Jethro Bodine. Jethro's family, the Clampetts, were outsiders in the Beverly Hills. Even though they had more money and more wealth than many of their neighbors, they were still treated as outsiders and treated as if they did not belong. This week's Torah portion, Yitro, is named after an outsider who finds himself connected to the Israelites. Yitro is also the only Torah portion named after a non-Israelite, or we could say named after a non-Jew. Yitro is Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses' father-in-law. The Torah tells us that Yitro heard of the Exodus from Mitzrayim. He heard of all the miracles, so he took Zipporah, his daughter, who is also Moses' wife, and their kids, who Moses had left behind in Midian. And with them in tow, he joined the Israelites encamped in the Sinai Desert. Moses is excited to see his father-in-law. He greets his father-in-law, sacrifices are offered, they reminisce, they eat, and then Moses takes him into the tent so they can continue talking. And Moses tells him all the crazy details of how God defeated Pharaoh's God and how God defeated Pharaoh and the Israelites and the Egyptians. And of course, Yitro is impressed and thought this was awesome, and he was so proud of his son-in-law. But then the next day, he wakes up and he sees his son-in-law in action. And he watches as Yitro, he watches as family after family bring problems and complaints to Moses. Yitro is impressed, but he's also worried. He's worried that his son-in-law is going to tire himself out. And I'm also sure Yitro wanted more grandchildren. And if his son-in-law continued to do all this work, he was not going to get more grandchildren. And he was also probably concerned that Moses was not spending enough time with his daughter, Moses' wife, Zipporah. And so as Sheila pointed out, Yitro outlines this brilliant system of courts where Moses recruits suitable people who are honest and trustworthy. And we have this wonderful democratic system that we still, in many ways, live by today. And I don't know if Senator Adam Schiff is still here, but like it's kind of cool as I'm talking about our court system. So if you think about this, so Yitro, an outsider to the Jewish community, a stranger who is now part of the Jewish community, a newcomer to the tribe and its beliefs. I wondered, why is it that Yitro can see what's missing and what's wrong with what Moses is doing? And the only one that can find a solution. And Yitro finds a system that's more efficient, and brings Torah and justice to the people. Why did Moses or any of the elders figure this piece out? My answer is that Yitro, like the characters in the Beverly Hillbillies, Yitro sits on the margin of society. Yitro sits on the margins of Jewish life, and sometimes it takes an outsider to see what's missing and be able to innovate. The Israelites were probably just used to the way things were done, used to the way Moses conducted business, probably said things like, this is how it's always done. We've always done it this way. And Yitro understood how to make the Torah work for all people, which was a system made up of individuals who will speak with more than one voice. And people who will look at the Torah with more than one world view. The Torah of one person, even a Moses, is not the Torah of a nation. Yitro's plan is democratic, taking it out of the hands of one individual and making it the property of the people. So you may be asking, why am I talking about this on Women's League Shabbat? Because, and I said this to some people, the rabbi and the other folks I was meeting with the other day, that because of the feminist movement, particularly the second wave of the feminist movement, which began in the 1960s, this time period was a significant turning point in Judaism. During this time, for the first time in Jewish history, we saw women in droves being ordained as rabbis, cantors, getting degrees in Jewish studies, Talmudic studies, and so on. I'm bringing this up because throughout history, our texts were only translated through the eyes of men. Men who we believe wrote our text, men translated our text, and men lifted up the stories in our sacred text that they believed were the most important or they wanted to highlight. When women started looking at our texts and translating them, those scholars started lifting up stories that men had just ignored. Women looked for places where we were alive in the text. Women looked for places where that showed that women were seen and valued. These women also brought their perspectives, their experiences to our tradition, and were able to make Judaism work for both men and women in ways that had not been done before. We see a similar change with the ordination and scholarship of queer people in the 80s. Queer people who benefited greatly from the feminist movement, they began looking at our texts through a queer lens and lifting up stories and offering fuller translations that straight people had just ignored or did not see. And we are now seeing some of the same changes with the ordination of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color Jews. Today, I work at Reconstructing Judaism. I work in Reconstructing Judaism as the inaugural director of racial diversity, equity, inclusion. And part of my role is to ensure that Reconstructing Judaism lives up to its values of striving to be an anti-racist organization. One of the things that I want to point out before I close is that the entire leadership of the Reconstructionist movement, which is the college, the congregational arm, and the Rabbinical Association, the entire movement, with the exception of our director of operations, is completely led by women. And 2 of us are women of color. Reconstructing Judaism was the first movement to hire a woman of color, myself, as a senior staff person. I report directly to our president, Rabbi Deborah Waxman. The Reconstruction Rabbinical College was the first rabbinical college in the United States to hire a woman of color, a Black woman, as the vice president of academic affairs, AKA the dean. The dean of the college, the head faculty person at the Reconstruction Rabbinical College is a Black woman, Dr. Amanda Mabouvi. I'm highlighting this because it shows that when we create more inclusive Torah, instead of the Torah of one, we get more diversity. We get better Torah, we get more diversity, we get better Torah, and we get an amazing organizations that truly represent the amazing, beautiful tapestry that is the Jewish people. And so to close, I'm gonna offer a song that I wrote in honor of my mother who passed away on the saddest day of the Jewish New Year. And Tisha B'Av, and I think in many ways that my non-Jewish mother wanted to make sure that I remember her passing by choosing that date. But I dedicate this song that I wrote for her. And I have a lot of thoughts about my own voice, but when my mom was in hospice, she found comfort and loved the song. And so I sing it whenever I can. But I want to offer this song to mothers, daughters, people raising female identified children. I was raised by a mother who taught me that I could be anything, and a father who taught me to dare to be different. So, have to do something funky with the Zoom for a second. There we go. Okay. All right. When I was young, my mama said to me, when I was young, my mama said to me, you can be anything you wanna be. So I joined the U.S. Army so I could fight for my country, because you can be anything you wanna be. Then I got me a graduate degree, and now I'm a rabbi, look at me, because I can be anything I wanna be. When I was young, my mama said to me, when I was young, my mama said to me, you can be anything you wanna be. So one day I said to my daughter what my mama said to me, and she looked into my eyes, and she said, I will be anything I wanna be, because you could be anything you wanted to be. So for whoever needs to be this, whoever needs to hear this, don't let anybody tell you can't do something. Because one day you could be a Black queer woman, a rabbi. So thank you all for letting me talk with you this morning.
Rabbi Lawson, thank you for speaking to us this morning and showing us yourself. Thank you for the message. You are very, very special. And not only do we see that in you, but I believe that you have shown the capacity to bring hope to everybody.
Thank you.
God bless you. I want to say to the congregation, Rabbi Lawson is going to be back with us tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. You received yesterday in your B'nai Torah emails a link to a Zoom conversation, which we will be having. And I really look forward to that. And I thank you again for being with us. And I thank Women's League for bringing you to us.
Thank
Shabbat
you.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.